So in the Purge, all crime is legal for 12 hours. I mean, not really, they say all crime is legal, but then give you a bunch of restrictions anyway. This is apparently the ultimate solution to all of America's problems. But there was a question I was always asking myself. How much damage occurs every year? So in this video, we'll look at all the injuries sustained in the movie and determine the survival chance, the recovery time, and the total cost of medical bills for every on-screen injury. Now I will say that this is just for entertainment purposes, and the numbers are very rough estimates based on averages I found during my research. I found out quickly that it's incredibly difficult to estimate the dollar value of the potential medical bill by just seeing the injury for 2 seconds. So take these numbers with a mountain of salt. For the cost, we're considering emergency room visits, surgeries, hospitalizations, ICU visits, tests, medications, follow-up care, and some other stuff. So let's get started analyzing the medical bill for The Purge. In this first movie, we're following just the Sandin family, and oh boy do I hope these guys have good insurance. The daughter, Zoe, has a boyfriend named Henry, and this guy, yeah, he's not very smart. He hides in the family's home during the Purge lockdown to discuss the relationship he has with Zoe with James, her father. However, he then pulls a gun on him, and the two end up in a shootout where Henry gets shot in the lower chest. Usually this injury has a survival rate of like 30 to 50%, however, since he gets shot right at the beginning of the Purge, meaning that an ambulance will not arrive for at least 12 hours, his odds of survival go down all the way to less than 10%. However, if you do survive this, the recovery time would take several weeks to a few months, with likely long-term complications. The average cost would be between $34,500 to $172,000 or more. I hope it was worth it, bro. Why does he shoot him from so far away anyway? If you want to kill someone, I mean, you shouldn't kill anyone, but if you do, you gotta do it fast, like in The Irishman or something. Later on, we see the homeless man arrive at the house, and Charlie, the son, lets him in. He's also not very smart. It's not clear what the injury the man already has is exactly, but I'm guessing that it's something like a laceration by his chest. I'm guessing that because the douchebags who want to kill him want to do it slowly, and a gunshot wound seems less dramatic than a stab or a cut. The likelihood of surviving a deep cut, combined with the fact that you have to wait long for emergency services to arrive, is between 50 and 80%. The recovery time will be several weeks, and the average cost of this injury would be between $3,500 to $16,000. Later on, the same person is in a scuffle with James, who tells him to just accept his fate and die. Can't believe that didn't work. This results in the man getting shot. His survival chance now goes down to 20 to 40%. Since it will still take hours for help to arrive, the recovery process will take months to years, with long-term physical problems remaining. The total cost for this guy will now rise to $115,500 to potentially more than $1,050,000. By the way, the fact that help doesn't arrive for such a long time makes these bills drastically more expensive. Then for a really long time, not really that much happens. People are walking around the house for a little bit, and it's kind of dark and creepy, but you know, not really that much happening. But towards the end, we get a lot of fighting, and this means a lot of money is being spent. During one of the earlier fights in this segment, one of the home invaders gets a pool ball slammed against his temple. For this guy, it's very difficult to estimate how likely it is for him to survive, since this is a very sensitive area, but it's probably 5 to 10%. If he survives, he's looking at traumatic brain injury and skull fractures. The recovery time is at least a few months, and the cost of this one surprised me, with it being $72,500 to $275,000 or more. I gotta be honest, I expected this one to be a little lower. Then there is this random woman who's just begging to get killed. James shoots her in the body with a shotgun. The odds of surviving this are roughly 20%. The recovery time will take at least several months and can easily be several years, with likely long-term complications and permanent damage. The cost would be between $115,000 to more than $1,050,000. Another guy is then chopped in the back with an axe, and the result of this one also kind of surprised me. The survival chance is only between 5 and 10%. The recovery time will last years with a likely permanent disability because it looks like he's chopped right in the spine. The cost can be between $124,000 to $1.1 million or more, but all three of them are shot by James afterwards anyway, so it looks like they're at least avoiding the medical bill. James is then stabbed in the lower left chest by the main villain, who then treats him like a child that's being put to bed. This one has one of the higher survival rates with about 50% or more, and we do see that James is able to hold on for some time. The recovery time could take several weeks to months. The cost would be on average between $24,500 and $122,000 or more. That one seemed pretty high to me, but again, one big contributing factor is that there is no ambulance coming for at least another few hours. You know what? Look, I have an idea. Instead of buying 50 guns, how about any one of these people invests in a band-aid or a first aid kit or something that will decrease the likelihood of them dying or bleeding out? At this point, the family is sort of rescued by their neighbors, who show up with guns and, without any hesitation, gun down 2 people by a car, both shot 3 times. Likelihood of survival is between 10 and 20%, which I found surprisingly high. Recovery time would be several weeks to months with likely long-term complications. The price tag of this would be between $105,000 and $1,020,000 or more for each person, with most of it going towards the likely very complicated surgeries. The Sandin family is then confronted by the main villain, who takes forever to load his shotgun, but then Zoe shoots him 6 times in the body. How did he not notice her? She's right in front of him. The likelihood of surviving this would be 5 to at most 10% if you're really lucky. The recovery time would be between several months and years, and long-term complications will definitely apply. The cost would be between $515,500 and $2,050,000. But he says he's well off, so maybe he'll pay it off in 10 years. Then it turns out that the neighbors want to kill the Sandin family themselves, but luckily they are rescued by the homeless man, who instantly shoots one of the neighbors 3 times. The survival chance again is between 10 and 20%. The whole recovery process would be prolonged and extremely challenging. It could take several weeks to months, and long-term complications may persist. The price of this one would be the same as with the people by the car, so let's add it to cart. Finally, all of them sit in peace and wait for the purge to be over, but then this crazy lady tries to grab a gun. Surviving this is very likely, with the average being around 99%. The recovery would only be a few weeks. The total cost would be between $1,800 and $8,500. This does not include the plastic surgery nose job she will likely get. And that's pretty much the end of this story. However, if you watch the movie, you know that these aren't technically the only on-screen injuries. The intro shows us plenty more. One guy is shot 4 times in the body. Survival chance? Less than 5% to 10%. It can be higher, but only if no vital organs are hit. The recovery time would be at the very least several months and can easily take longer than a year. Since the person is shot multiple times, a very rough estimate according to my research would be, at the very low end, $115,000 if no vital organs are hit, to $1,050,000 or more, depending on how complicated the surgeries are. Then we see one person getting beat up in a street fight. A street fight is, out of all the things here, probably the thing you're most likely to survive, with a chance of 80% or more. It's unlikely that someone dies in a fist fight on the street, but it is the Purge, so people are going out of their way to kill. It will likely take around several weeks to a few months to fully recover, and depending on how badly you're beaten up, the cost could range from $10,000 to $45,000, with much of the potential costs going to rehabilitation if necessary. Next up, we see one person being chopped with an axe 3 times. Getting hit with an axe, believe it or not, is not a good thing. You're looking at a survival rate of 10% or less. The recovery time is at least several months to a year with likely permanent complications. The total cost if you survive can be anywhere from $105,500 to $530,000 or more depending on what gets hit. Shortly after, we see one person being shot 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times in the back. Yeah, look, you're pretty much dead at this point, with a survival rate of less than 5% if you're lucky. The calculation gets a little weird when the odds are really low, by the way. That's why I'm saying less than 5%, even though it's probably less than 1% at this point. A full recovery is not likely. Ever, a partial recovery would take many years with extensive continuous treatment. The cost? Look, trust me, you'd rather be dead. The surgeries alone can be hundreds of thousands of dollars, and considering that a stay in the ICU is just like really expensive, you're looking at $120,000 to more than $5 million. Afterwards, we see one person being kicked in the street. The guy getting his ass blasted is probably one of the luckier ones. Again, judging only from what we see, there is a chance of 90% or more of surviving this. Injuries might include fractures, soft tissue damage, and head trauma, but at least you're alive. The recovery time might only be a few days to several weeks depending on the severity, and the cost could be as low as $2,100 to $9,500. This is of course considering that they leave him alone right afterwards, but I can only judge from what I see. The next person is shot in the body twice. The likelihood of living through this is about 10 to 20%. The recovery time could last a few months in the best case scenario to multiple years with permanent complications, again depending on what parts of the body are hit. It could be between $55,000 and $225,000. Anyway, one person is then shot 3 times. This combination we've seen a few times now, so let's add it to cart. Next up is one person beaten by a few guys with baseball bats. From the brief clip we see there's a rough survival rate of 50 to 70%. Injuries might include blunt force trauma and internal injuries. The recovery time could be as little as a few weeks to several months, but rehabilitation and follow-up care may be needed for a full recovery. The cost would be on average $24,500 to roughly $200,000, unless you're kick-ass. In that case, this would just be a Saturday night for you. So I really hope that you guys like this type of video. It was a little silly, of course, but I had this idea and I just wanted to do it no matter what, despite it being a giant pain in the ass to research everything. And even then, it's still probably like really inaccurate. Anyway, I hope you liked it and that I get to see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.